Today's show is brought to you by LootCrate.com. Save 10% on any new subscription by going to trylootcrate.com/armchair. Enter promo code BRIDGE10 to save 10%. Again, that's trylootcrate.com/armchair. Enter promo code BRIDGE10. What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. You can also follow the show at Talk Loud Podcast. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. You can find us also at TalkLoudRadio.com and, of course, streaming on the Going for Two app. All right, guys. Today we're going to look back on the fantasy football season that we just kind of got through with. We're entering the playoffs now, so we're going to kind of look at some fantasy awards we're going to hand out today, and then we'll kind of look forward a little bit to the playoff season, and then we'll talk some NBA after the break. Tonight, joining me on the podcast, I have Going for Two's Jack of all trades. He hasn't been on in a while, but we've got Matt Sandell of GoingFor2.com. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. Ready to talk some NFL fantasy playoffs, and the NBA season's almost in full swing. We're almost to the Christmas break, where a lot of non-casual fans start to come out and start watching the NBA season. And you know, we've had some excellent seasons so far. So yeah, let's dive right in.
Definitely. All right. Well, let's just start off with giving out some regular season fantasy football awards. We'll start off with a couple of players that kind of surprised you during the season. Who are your most surprising fantasy players so far this season?
Well, for me, I mean, it's got to be Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. That's just an interesting situation. Like he was that one guy in preseason. Everybody's like, oh, you better watch out for Kamara. He's going to be good. It's like, well, he was behind Adrian Peterson and Mark Ingram. I didn't think he was going to get a big workload. And then, of course, Peterson gets traded, and then Ingram is sort of in a timeshare because Kamara was so good. And he was not drafted in basically anybody's standard league, so he was just a waiver wire pickup. And he already has 500 receiving and 500 rushing yards. And it's week 11, and it sucks that he got injured yesterday, which kind of tanked quite a few people's lineups for their fantasy playoff games, because he only played about half a quarter or a quarter of football yesterday. But Kamara, I didn't see that. That was just out of left field. I mean, he was just the preseason MVP basically, but actually got some real workload in New Orleans.
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely on my list as well.
If you got him in a keeper league or something.
Yeah, he's definitely on my list as well as the most surprising player. I mean, he coming into the season, we're talking about Leonard Fournette, we're talking about Dalvin Cook, we're talking about Joe Mixon. We're talking about Christian McCaffrey. No one was mentioning Alvin Kamara, coming into the season, other than a flyer that you could take in your rookie drafts if you're playing Dynasty. As far as redraft, I don't think he was mentioned at all. Probably went undrafted in most leagues.
Exactly.
And he just blew up. I mean, he just took the reins there, and the Saints have always been kind of known as that two-headed monster anyway. Back to the days when they had Sproles. So it's not surprising that they can have two running backs, be fantasy relevant in that offense. But for a rookie to come in and do what he's doing, it's been nothing short of amazing for sure.
Well, in fantasy football, I just hate not playing bell cow running backs like Le'Veon Bell, Melvin Gordon, guys that are going to get guaranteed 20, 25 touches a game. I hate having to guess between like Lamar Miller or Donta Foreman and stuff like that. And
Right.
so that's why a lot of people didn't give Kamara a chance. It's like, oh, he's the third running back on the depth chart, or he's splitting a timeshare with Ingram. So I was too one of them who it's tough to play when Ingram gets all the goal line touches and is more utilized in the running game. But Kamara is good, man. He's an excellent football player, and he's going to be definitely a top 10 pick in next year's drafts, I think. I mean, why not?
Definitely. Just to add one more player to that name or to that list, there is I also was surprised by Juju Smith-Schuster. In Pittsburgh, he was basically coming in as basically the fourth receiver behind, Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, and then they had Eli Rodgers in the slot. He kind of was that fourth guy. Wasn't expected to really do much. Again, coming into the season, we're talking about Corey Davis, we're talking about John Ross, we're talking about Mike Williams, and no one's talking about Juju. And I think so far this season, he's been having the best season of all those receivers.
Excellent, absolutely, and he's had an excellent season, especially considering, you got two of the best young receivers in football on the Steelers in Martavis Bryant and Antonio Brown. How are you supposed to fit a third one on there? And then, of course, Bryant's had some issues with the management and the coaching staff, and so that's given an opportunity for Juju to shine, and he's an excellent football player too. He plays hard, and he's a fan favorite for sure. Another one, that's I think on everybody's list, and I wouldn't consider it that much of a surprise because I am a Vikings fan, but you gotta give shout out and love to Adam Thielen of the Minnesota Vikings. He's had just an incredible season. He has over 1,000 yards, and it's week 12. And
definitely,
it's just
no one saw him coming.
He didn't have any D1 offers. Played at Mankato State here in Minnesota, and he's now third or fourth behind Julio, Antonio Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins in receiving. And he also has Diggs on the other side, who gets a lot of balls thrown his way. So, he's not even the number one receiver on the Vikings, and he's got 1,000 yards. So Adam Thielen was taken late in most people's fantasy rounds. He was drafted for sure, unlike Kamara. But if you had Adam Thielen in like the 9th or 10th round of your fantasy draft, you're most likely going to be playing for a championship this year.
Definitely. And just to add a quarterback to that list, Carson Wentz in his second year, I don't think anybody saw, they all saw that he was a good quarterback last year. I don't think anybody saw that he'd be coming in, to week 13 it is now, and he's an MVP candidate of the league. No one saw that coming. Everyone had the Eagles picked to be last in that division. They're leading the division by a lot. They should wrap it up probably this weekend if they haven't already. And yeah, I just think Carson Wentz has been one of those quarterbacks that you probably got late, maybe went undrafted in some leagues, and it's just blown up. He's like an excellent quarterback. I think this past weekend, I believe it was this past weekend, week 12, there's a ridiculous pass that he made where he's rolling out of the pocket being chased by a linebacker, sort of stumbles and throws a 52-yard strike to Nelson Aguilar while he's falling down. Just ridiculous passes. I think this kid's going to be great when he gets a couple years under his belt.
I think. Well, first off, I think he's great now. He's going to win the MVP. I don't think Brady really deserves it. The fact that the Eagles were definitely, nobody thought the Giants are tanking, like the Redskins are. The Eagles are the favorites in the NFC right now, and that's only because of Carson Wentz's play. That's nobody else's. They have no big name running backs. They have no. You got Jeffrey, then basically no other wide receivers. Zach Ertz has been awesome for them, and their defense isn't anything really to write home about. It's getting better by the week, but Carson Wentz is the only reason that team is 10-2, and there's no doubt in my mind he's the MVP of the league. Brady may have a better completion or better QBR, but Wentz has more touchdown passes, and the touchdown passes he's throwing to, the guys that he's throwing to are just no name, like Corey Clement and like Nelson Aguilar is now a fantasy stud because of Wentz's play.
Exactly.
And it boggles your mind, Jeff, how guys like him and Thielen weren't even D1 prospects, and they're like some of the best at their position in the NFL. How did college coaches miss these guys? It boggles my mind how someone who didn't even get a D1 offer is tearing up the NFL.
I think honestly, what it is for me, I think what happens is a lot of those guys that don't get those, those D1 offers, they're a little bit hungrier and they have to work harder at their craft in order to be noticed by the NFL. Whereas you got guys
100%.
that are making it by on talent alone. They think they can just go into the NFL, and be a freak athlete and succeed, and they haven't really put in the work to be a good player. So I think that can happen a lot. I think you see some guys that come into the league are just freaks of nature, and they just can't get the routes down. They can't learn the playbook. Whereas these guys that are coming into the league are learning the playbooks before they get to the NFL. I think has a lot to do with their work ethic.
Yeah, 100%. And that same goes for guys in the NBA like Isaiah Thomas, undervalued, always overlooked for his size. Guys like Kyle Kuzma this year, who was like the 28th pick, who's now the best Laker rookie right now, even with Lonzo Ball there. So I mean, you get snubbed a little. It makes you want to work harder. I completely agree with that theory.
All right, let's look from a dynasty perspective at some of the rookies that we had this year in fantasy. Of course, it was a pretty big rookie running back draft. We had tons of running backs going in the top of your rookie drafts. A couple good receivers there. Not so much in the quarterback front. We do have the one guy I'm sure we'll mention that got injured this year. But let's start at running back. Of all the running backs there, we mentioned Alvin Kamara already, but looking at Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook, even though he's hurt. Christian McCaffrey. If we're looking forward to, next season, the season after that, which of these running backs you like the most?
This has been probably, and they say the position's sort of dying because, it's so easy to pass in the NFL now and just do slant patterns, and it's just a passing league now. Guys are throwing for 5,000 yards routinely every year, and that had never happened basically pre-2011. But this is a nice banner year for running backs, rookie running backs, and maybe we'll see a little rejuvenation in the position. For me, I just think buying away Leonard Fournette is the best running back, and it might be the best running back in football for years to come. And we definitely have some good ones in David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley. But Leonard Fournette, just that team cannot. The Jaguars don't have a quarterback. Blake Bortles just does not pass the ball. They just want him to keep giving it to Fournette, and it works. He gets 100 yards every game and always 100 and a touchdown. So I think until the Jaguars get a better quarterback, I think Leonard Fournette is going to be the best running back from this class. And of course, we have guys like Kamara and McCaffrey, but even like Tariq Cohen of the Chicago Bears had an excellent start to the season, and he had I don't know if you saw that. You definitely saw that punt return against your 49ers.
Yes,
that was
one
of the craziest plays I've ever seen. Just excellent. And he was like a 4th, 5th round pick. So Tariq Cohen too. So there just have been some excellent running backs this year. And of course, Dalvin Cook got hurt. And when it's an ACL tear, you don't really know what to think coming into next season for a running back because God knows you could either turn into Adrian Peterson or Rashad Mendenhall. You never know.
Exactly. And speaking of Tariq Cohen, it still hurts my heart. I actually drafted him in my fantasy dynasty rookie draft. I got him in the last round with my last pick as a flyer. And then, of course, going into the beginning of the season, they had that game that was canceled because of the hurricane. And I had Mike Evans and Jameis Winston. So I had to find a quarterback and a receiver. So I actually had to drop Tariq Cohen in that week 1 matchup to get a quarterback and a receiver. Of course, he has a huge game 1, and then I don't get a chance to add him back on my waivers, and now I don't own him anymore. So I kind of lost on him. But man, I was so upset about that.
Nobody saw that week 1 performance coming. Not even him, I don't think. He just had him. He was in the perfect DK lineup or whatever it was.
Right.
So was like Kenny Galladay, and it's just a random. Nobody knew who Tariq Cohen was until after that week, but people know his name now, and he's definitely, again, though, I hate that timeshare with Jordan Howard there, but the Bears have some good young running backs to build around for the future.
Definitely. All right, let's move to receiver. For as good as the running backs were this year, the receivers probably were equally and utterly is terrible. Receiver typically over the years has been a position that's taken a couple years for receivers to sort of learn the offense. You've got exceptions, of course, like Odell Beckham Jr. and guys like that just kind of blew up on the scene, but of these receivers, looking at, Corey Davis, Zay Jones, John Ross, Cooper Kupp, the aforementioned Juju Smith-Schuster, Kenny Galladay, you just mentioned, Mike Williams. Who do you like going forward?
Man, you're right. This is a really, really bad wide receiver year. And you asked me like who is the best fantasy wide receiver who is a rookie, and it's got to be Christian McCaffrey. Like he has 65 catches and has like 600 yards, a couple touchdowns. And I think long term, I know the Panthers like to use him in different ways, but maybe he could turn into sort of like a Randall Cobb for them. Like Christian McCaffrey isn't a running back. He's just not in the NFL. He's really, really bad at running the football. He's only averaging like I think he's still down. It might be under 3, but he's hovering around 3 yards per carry, which is just terrible. And so I don't think. I mean, they like to use him in the slot and on screen plays and stuff. But he's been the best rookie wide receiver this year, and his brother actually plays wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's on a practice squad. He gets moved around a lot, but I think McCaffrey is probably going to just end up playing wide receiver and being sort of like a Julian Edelman type or a Danny Amendola. I don't think he's just not a good running back. He's not good at running the football in the NFL, and he's just way better utilized in the passing game.
Yeah, I think he's definitely better in space for sure. I mean, he's a smallish guy. You know, he gets in the middle of the linebackers there, and they just basically breathe on him, and he falls over. So he's definitely one of those running backs that can, get out on the edges there. Line up in the slot. Line up in the in the sort of the shotgun where they're next to the quarterback, and they just kind of flare out. That's what I see him really being. I don't think he's going to be ever a true running back, but if you're in a PPR league, you got to love him because, I mean, PPR basically has kept him relevant because, beginning of the season, he wasn't doing much. I actually own him, drafted him in my dynasty league, and I was kind of struggling early on, but, over the last few weeks, he's been really coming on. And so I think going forward, I think he'll be a pretty good PPR running back for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, other than that, to answer your question, probably the best rookie wide receiver this year has probably been Cooper Kupp of the Rams. Schuster has had a couple big games which have elevated his stats. I mean, he didn't do anything like weeks 1 through 6. So I think Cooper Kupp is probably, if you had to draft one, he's been an excellent, and the whole Rams offense has been awesome this year, especially considering how bad they were last year with Jeff Fisher and what Todd Gurley called a middle school offense, which I thought it was hilarious. And so, yeah, Cooper Kupp has been an awesome for PPR formats. I don't really see it. You can't really play him in non-PPR because he just loves getting those receptions and doesn't have a lot of touchdown potential. But yeah, he gets some good yards, and he's been in some solid lineups for me this year.
Definitely. I think there's 2 guys on this list that have had injuries that could potentially be breakouts next year. Corey Davis and Mike Williams, of course, they were the top 2 receivers going in most drafts, if they were drafted at all in standard leagues. I think
Mike Williams for sure. I think he has star potential for the Chargers too.
Definitely. I think as long as Rivers is there, I think he can be relevant. Corey Davis, to see if he can ever stay on the field long enough to get a rapport with Mariota, I think he can be the number 1 receiver there in Tennessee. Now, granted, they're a running offense, so he'll never be like the Calvin Johnson of that team, but he can be definitely a usable receiver in that offense for sure.
I don't know what Mariota just does not utilize his receivers ever. Like, you never own Titans wide receivers because he either dumps it off to his running backs and Murray and Henry, or he hits Delaney Walker as their leading receiver right now. He just does not look on the sidelines for receivers that much.
Definitely. All right, let's move to quarterback now. Rookie quarterbacks been pretty dismal. There weren't too many that were even drafted in most standard drafts. Some of them are probably taking flyers on Dynasty. There is one guy, of course, on this list, Deshaun Watson, of course, I'm talking about, who he blew up. I mean, if he had continued on that rate, he would have been in the MVP conversation if Houston could have done anything as far as playoff contentions. Fortunately, he goes down. But are there any other quarterbacks out there? Deshaun Kaiser, Trubisky, does Mahomes ever get the reins from Alex Smith? Any of these guys interest you going forward, or is it just Deshaun Watson?
Well, you remember on our fantasy mock draft when we had us and 5 other guys doing our mock draft last April, I guess it was. I said that, of course, I had the Cleveland Browns picks. We all decided to take different teams, and I had both the Browns picks, and I said they go and take Myles Garrett first, and then I said they throw a bone to the fans, and they take Deshaun Watson just to get a little hype, kind of like they did with Manziel several years ago. And damn it, I should be the GM of the Cleveland Browns because I said Deshaun Watson. What can you say about him? He had back-to-back 5 touchdown games against the Titans, and I believe it wasn't the Seahawks, was it? He just had a really good game. I forgot the other team that it was, but Deshaun Watson, the Browns missed on Wentz and Watson. They had 2 opportunities, and now going into next year's draft, Sam Darnold, the top QB, said if the Browns have the first pick, he's not going to declare. So nobody wants to play quarterback for the Browns. So they should have taken Watson with the 12th pick. They could add Myles Garrett and Watson to build around, but that's a story for a different day. Anyway, I don't think Deshaun Kaiser of the Browns, he's just not good. He doesn't really have a feel for the position, and he makes a ton of mistakes, fumbles the ball, and throws a lot of picks, and they're not going to go with him long term. They even benched him for Keith Hogan, and then Hogan was terrible, and so they just have to play it out with Kaiser as quarterback right now until they can either draft Rosen maybe, or I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to be interesting because they cannot get free agent quarterbacks to play in Cleveland, so they're definitely going to have to draft. But Watson was the feel-good story of the NFL, and he tore his ACL, and it sucks, but he's the only quarterback from this draft that is going to be fantasy relevant in the future. I mean, Mahomes, nobody knows what to think about him, and man, the Chiefs sure have shit the bed in the last 6 weeks.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I got a friend who's a Chiefs fan, and I sense him. Last 7 weeks, the Chiefs are like 1-6. 49ers are 2-5. I was like, we got you on that one.
Nice. That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, you know me, I love to sports bet, and I can't even, if the 49ers were to play the Chiefs, I'd stay away from that game because the Chiefs have lost to the Jets. They have lost to the Giants. They have lost to some terrible football teams, and they started off 5-0 beating the Patriots. So it was kind of like my Vikings last year. Started off 5-0, finished 8-8, didn't even make the playoffs.
Yep. It happens in the NFL, unfortunately. All right, let's look forward to the fantasy playoffs here and some storylines that are going on, for owners that are still playing in their fantasy leagues. Of course, Josh Gordon, came back to the field after 3 years of dealing with addiction. The Browns targeted him quite a bit in that first game. Had a pretty good first game there. How do you see him impacting the playoffs going forward if you're one of those lucky owners that picked him up when he was supposed to come back into the NFL?
I got to give owners who did that a lot of credit because...
Thank you.
Man.
I did it in 3 of my leagues.
Nice. Well, he might actually win a championship belt for you, but he has been the most polarizing fantasy player I think we've ever seen. His return to the Browns has gotten so many different opinions of, is he going to be relevant? Is he in football shape? I mean, why? He just came back from being addicted to alcohol and marijuana, and you think he can torch the cornerbacks of the NFL who've been playing all year and who are actually in football shape? I mean, it's a tough question for sure. But after last week, 4 receptions, 85 yards, first game back against Casey Hayward, who's a really, really good cornerback. And Hayward even said Gordon's the best receiver he's faced all year. So
wow.
I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that for what it's worth and say that he wasn't just saying that. And I think Gordon, you need to start him in your fantasy playoffs this week. I think you have to, and from weeks going forward. I think Josh Gordon is just so talented and one of the most physically gifted players the NFL's ever seen. He is the only receiver in NFL history to have back-to-back 200-yard receiving games, and people just refuse to give him credit. He had back-to-back 200-yard receiving games as a member of the Cleveland Browns of all teams.
And I believe who was his quarterback? It was Brian Hoyer, wasn't it?
It was Brandon Whedon.
Even worse. Even worse.
Quarterback for that. So he's one of the most physically gifted players in our league right now. He just is extremely talented, and I think I'm buying Gordon stock right now for sure. I think Josh Gordon is for real.
Yeah, I remember that season that he had, that ridiculous season last time he played, where he had 1,500 yards and I forget, like 15 touchdowns or something. I heard a story that he didn't even know most of the playbook. On some of the plays, they literally said, run a post or, go out and get open, basically, is what they told him, because he didn't know the playbook well enough. And they just threw him the ball and just let him do his thing. And it's kind of ridiculous to think that, coaches that are like these, hardcore must know the playbook or you're not going to play. They just basically threw him out there as a physical, gifted athlete and just said, get the ball and just do something with it.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, I think you and I, it's got to be, if it's the Browns, it's got to be like the Madden playbooks that they give you.
Exactly.
But I think Gordon is going to be, 85 yards is a lot, and he was targeted a lot last week. And I think he definitely has big play potential for sure. It's just, he does have Kaiser throwing him the ball, and I don't like Kaiser as a quarterback really. So I do think that Josh Gordon will help a lot of people win their leagues this year, which is crazy to think about.
It definitely is. I actually wrote in an article probably mid-season. Everyone kept asking me about Josh Gordon this, Josh Gordon that, and I said Josh Gordon's the Tupac of the NFL. He's not coming back. Well, I stand corrected. Josh Gordon came back. So,
hey, Tupac, the jury's still out on him. He could make a return here. I'm not convinced he's dead. So. If Josh Gordon can come back in the NFL, anything's possible.
Definitely. All right, let's move on to the next topic here. Of course, in the news lately, Aaron Rodgers has been talked about as targeting Week 15 as a return. That's right in the midst of the the fantasy playoffs. Should owners that either have dropped him or if he's sitting on waivers, should owners pick him up with the chance that they're going to be able to use him for Week 15 and 16? Or do you think that the Packers are just going to be out of playoff contention and he won't come back this season?
Well, I think the Packers, with the Seahawks beating the Eagles, the Packers are now, I believe, officially out of the playoff race. They're not making the playoffs. And, a lot of guys in Vegas are talking that the Browns might actually get their first win against the Packers this Sunday. So I'm staying away from that game. I have no idea. It's only Packers -3 against the Browns at home. So
wow.
I think Rodgers will come back. I think it's just, I think he will just to say that he did, because 2 months, broken collarbone, people thought he was out for the rest of the season, and just to do that, just to show the fans and everybody that he's in it. It's sort of a legacy play, and so I think he will be back. But the defenses that he has to play in the weeks that he comes back are the Carolina Panthers, who are extremely, extremely tough against quarterbacks, and my Minnesota Vikings, who are probably the best defense in the NFL. So if you're in a situation where your quarterback is like, I'm trying to think of it, like
Jameis Winston,
Jameis Winston, Jay Cutler, something like that. Maybe sure, take a flyer on him, but don't go reaching for him, because he has some tough defenses to play. He's probably not going to be at 100%, and the Packers really have nothing to play for. I think their season's over.
Yep, fair enough. Now, I do think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Packers have an outside chance because the team they're chasing is the Panthers. And, of course, they play the Panthers. So if they beat them, and that basically gains a whole game on them. So there's still a slight chance that the Packers could make it. But you're right. It's an uphill climb for sure. They
are definitely not statistically eliminated, nothing like that. But so many things would have to go right and
definitely
wrong for other teams for them to make the playoffs, and they're just not. Yeah, he's definitely coming back. Rodgers is 100% coming back. I know that. Even if they're out of playoff contention, I think he will still play, but there's no way the Packers make the playoffs this year. There's just no way.
All right. Let's talk about that last week of the NFL that people hate. I know a lot of leagues actually end on Week 16. Some leagues, I know you actually combined your Week 16 and Week 17 stats. But of course, a lot of teams will probably be resting players in that last week. Should owners that think that they can make the championship game be thinking about replacements for guys they have on, like the Patriots and the Vikings and the Eagles and possibly even the Steelers? Or you think it's too soon to look at that just yet?
All those teams are all 10-2, and obviously all want first round, and especially in the NFC. The NFC is so stacked. The Rams are 9-3, so 1 win, 1 loss from one of those teams, either the Vikings or the Panthers, and that the Rams could get a freaking first round home field advantage in the playoffs. So nothing. And you know how valuable first round and a first round bye and home field advantage in the playoffs is. So I think this is it's a different year this year where a lot of teams are fighting for a lot here. I mean, last year the Cowboys had it locked up by like week 12 or 13, so they could bench him. But other teams, like this is a tough playoff race. But I wouldn't play any Patriots for sure. Week 17, no way. Steelers, probably not either. But in the NFC, if you have players on NFC teams, I would definitely still start them in week 17. And I hate week 17 so much. I never have the playoffs include week 17. It's an awful week of football.
Agreed. All right. So you kind of mentioned earlier in the podcast that you came on to do a mock NFL draft for us before the draft last year. You're kind of a college guy. I'm not. I don't know a lot of college names. But if you can, before the break here, I wanted to see if you could just give us 3 names that should be on the radar for dynasty owners for the rookie draft coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you 2. I mean, I haven't done a lot of research and I haven't watched as much college football as I have in the past. But a couple guys I like are, of course, Penn State's Saquon Barkley. I love Saquon Barkley. He's just everything you want in a running back. He's like the college version of Le'Veon Bell. He's fast. He's big. He can catch. He does punt returns. He's just an all around excellent football player. So, and of course he'll be in the category of Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook. He'll be picked high in leagues next season for sure when he comes out. And depending on which team he goes to, like, I think, you know what your 49ers are going to do, Jeff, and I think you already know this, and most people know this, is they're going to have either the 2nd or 3rd overall pick, and they're going to draft a quarterback and then use that as leverage to get a monster Godfather offer from a team that needs a rookie quarterback. Teams that I'm thinking of, like Jacksonville, might need one. Jacksonville will definitely be on the phone with the 49ers. Maybe a team like the Giants, but they also have the 3rd pick. But there are going to be plenty of teams, good football teams with other good assets, who will be trading for the quarterback that the 49ers take. When they got Garoppolo, that was just an ingenious move.
Agreed.
And so I think whatever team ends up with Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold, it's going to be a contender. It's not going to be a Browns. I mean, one of them will go to the Browns, but it's going to be a good team like Jacksonville or possibly the Giants, a team that has a lot of good assets around them. So I'd say either Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold for sure are definitely going to be. So, I mean, this is a huge, excellent quarterback class. So you gotta look to one of those guys to be like a Goff or Wentz from a couple of years ago.
Definitely. Yeah, and I agree with you on the 49ers. I think if we can't outright trade the pick, we may just draft, that in that spot. But I think they're going to try to get, some extra draft picks and move back in the draft because we don't need a quarterback now. We have Garoppolo. I don't know if we even need necessarily a running back. If we got 2 pretty good ones, Carlos Hyde and Breida showed pretty good this season as well. So we may just draft, trade back, stack some more picks, bolster our defense, bolster our offensive line. And just kind of go from there. But I don't see us taking anything at the top of the draft right now with Garoppolo on a roster already.
I cannot praise John Lynch, your GM, enough for what he's done in the last year and a half. He might be he might be a top 5 GM in football. He made that excellent move with the Chicago Bears for Trubisky, just ingenious. And then of course the Garoppolo, you give up a 2nd round pick for a guy who has. I mean, a lot of people think that even though he played for the Patriots, and that's hard to gauge how good a guy in that system is a lot of people think that Garoppolo can be a Pro Bowler. So I think if you have Garoppolo there, no need to, they probably will draft a quarterback or trade that pick. There's just no doubt about it. For other future assets, maybe you could get like this year's first, next year's first, and a couple seconds for that 2nd, 3rd overall pick. So just an unbelievable job by John Lynch. You're in good hands. I know things haven't been great the last couple of years, but the 49ers are going to be good very soon.
Yeah, I like the way we're going. And people that didn't watch the game this past week, might look at the box score and say Garoppolo was just okay. I mean, he didn't have a touchdown pass. He had the one interception. But if you actually watch that game, he picked up third down after third down after third down. The interception actually was a perfectly thrown ball that the receiver caught. The cornerback actually ripped it out of his hands on the way down. So it actually wasn't Garoppolo's fault, the interception. And he actually could have had probably 2 or 3 touchdown passes if not for holding penalties. And right before the half, he threw a beautiful dime to our tight end, Kittles, in the back of the end zone that was just out of bounds by like a step. So I think if you actually watch that game, he actually played very well, and I like our chances going forward.
Exactly. And Kyle Shanahan's just look at what happened with Matt Ryan is not a good quarterback. He's Andy Dalton-esque right now, and it's all because of Shanahan, man. Shanahan just knows how to run offensive plays, and he just is an excellent cerebral offensive mind in the game of football. I think you guys are definitely in good hands. I think a Super Bowl in the next 3 to 5 years is another question for you guys, because Shanahan just knows how to run an offense. He's got a good quarterback. You guys are going to draft a lot of guys, and you're just going to have a ton of potential on that team. Just the night and day difference of Matt Ryan and the Falcons offense this year.
Definitely.
It's not been good. Julio is just, I don't know what happened. It's just, they have not been that good this year.
Definitely. All right, let's take a quick commercial break. And then when we come back, we'll talk some NBA. You want to do that?
Sounds good to me.
Do you need advice for your fantasy football team? How about your DraftKings or FanDuel lineup? GoingFor2.com has you covered. GoingFor2.com has exclusive content from some of the best fantasy writers in the industry, whose credentials include Bleacher Report, Fantasy Pros, and Fantasy Life. From advice columns to player ranks, GoingFor2.com has it all. Sign up for our newsletter to have all of our content sent to your inbox. Start winning today. Visit GoingFor2.com, because no one remembers the extra point.
It's yours. Whose world is this?
The world is yours. The world is yours.
It's mine. Whose world is this? It's yours. It's mine. Whose world is this?
The world is yours. The world is yours.
It's mine.
I sip the dub.
All right, welcome back. Again, we're here with Matt Sandell of GoingFor2.com, NFL and NBA, pretty much all around, baseball as well. He can do it all. All right, Matt, you ready to talk some NBA, man?
For sure, and I always got to commend you. You always have the best songs for the intros and outros to these podcasts. And you know, you're an older guy too, so you're still with the shits, man. People don't sleep on Jeff Lambert. He knows good tracks. Appreciate
it. All right, so we're coming up on Christmas here, as you mentioned before. This is kind of the unofficial start of the NBA season for all those fans that don't watch, during football season. They kind of kick off their second season, so to speak, during Christmas. So we're going to kind of look back at the season that's already happened and kind of give a recap to those people that haven't been paying attention. We'll start with teams. As far as biggest surprises, let's go with biggest surprises as far as in the positive, like teams that you thought weren't going to be good that are a lot better than you thought they were going to be.
Well, we're about 20, depending on which team you follow. We're about 25 games in, about a quarter of the way into the NBA season, and right now the team that I just am shocked at right now is the Detroit Pistons, and I think you definitely agree with me on that. The Pistons, a couple of years ago, they were a surprising 8th seed, and then last year they missed the playoffs in a really bad Eastern Conference, and now they're like the 4th seed. They were the 2nd seed for about 5 or 6, and just of course, I've knocked Andre Drummond all the time. I don't think he's that good of a player, and they're paying him $125 million. But he's upped his free throw percentage from 38 to about 61%, which is a huge
Wow.
difference. So now you can't really pack a Dre for them anymore. And I think it's really made a huge difference for them. And another thing is they play like old school smash mouth Detroit Pistons basketball. They don't have any good 3-point shooters on their team. They have Tobias Harris playing at the 3. I mean, they have Avery Bradley isn't a very good 3-point shooter. Reggie Jackson isn't either. And then, of course, Drummond don't even talk about that. But the Pistons are a huge surprise for me. I didn't see that coming at all. They're the 4th seed right now. I think they're 15 and 10, something like that. And they're just, I did not see that coming at all. And they're playing in a very terrible Eastern Conference. But yeah, the Detroit Pistons making a nice 4th seed, 5th seed playoff run. That'd be they're going to be an interesting team to watch from here on out.
Definitely. The one that surprises me probably wouldn't have surprised a lot of people that, that don't follow the NBA too closely, but the Boston Celtics surprised me, especially after Gordon Hayward went down. I didn't think they would be this good this soon. I didn't think Kyrie Irving had it in them to carry a team. I thought losing Isaiah Thomas would hurt a little more than it actually has. I mean, this team at one point, would they go on like a 15 or 16 game winning streak? Something ridiculous like that. They've only lost 4 games all year. They're playing great defense, which is something that they struggled with last year, especially at the point guard position with Isaiah Thomas there. Playing great defense. Their offense is pretty good. They got some guys that you may not have heard of, like Jason Tatum that's playing really well, and you got Rozier off the bench and a few other guys. And this team has really kind of surprised me as far as how good they are.
I was going to mention them as like an honorable mention because, I mean, they were the number 1 seed in the East last year. Even with the Cavs, they just had a better record in the regular season. Of course, we all know how that turned out, but 100% could not agree with you more because the Boston Celtics have 11 new faces on their roster. Out of the 14 roster spots, 3 guys are returning. And taking 11 players who have never played together, guys like Aaron Baines, you got Jason Tatum is a rookie now. Gordon Hayward came in. They have Marcus Morris. They have so many new faces. And to get a team to win 16 straight games who have never played before anymore is nothing short of a miracle. And Brad Stevens is going to win Coach of the Year because of it. I don't understand. You're great point. I mean, they just had so many new faces and they're better than they ever were last year. And they actually might be a legitimate threat to the Cavs in the playoffs, I think.
Honestly, when Ainge made the trade, I was kind of shaking my head like, Ainge, you've been doing so good for so long. Like, how could you make this mistake? Giving up so much for Kyrie Irving. And now I'm like, okay, I get it. He's a lot smarter than me. So maybe he knew what he was doing after all. But yeah, it's crazy. I think he can get GM of the year with that.
Oh, for sure. And I think Ainge is the best GM in basketball. I don't think it's particularly close. I just think every trade he makes, he wins every single trade. Isaiah Thomas was traded for Marcus Thornton and like a 2nd-round pick, and he got an almost MVP caliber player.
Right.
And so Ainge just knows what he's doing, and it's pretty amazing because I wrote an article about it in the summer. That was the Kyrie for Isaiah Thomas deal was the most shocking trade of my lifetime in the NBA because you got Isaiah Thomas, one of the biggest fan favorites in the country, in the NBA, has an amazing season. His sister died. He played through it, and they just flip him. And, of course, he's had some things to say about that with Ainge. And just the fact that it's 2 teams who are contenders, 1 and 2 seeds in their conference, trading just doesn't make a lot of sense either. And it never happens because why do 2 top teams in their conference want to trade for each other? It just doesn't make any sense. And then just the fact that the team trading away the superstar actually got a nice return is shocking because, I've dealt with it several times. The Kevin Garnett trade with my Timberwolves, we got nobody in that draft or in that trade besides Al Jefferson and a bunch of crap. So, and it sent our franchise back several years. So that was just a shocking trade. But the Celtics look like the team to beat in the East.
Definitely. All right, let's go on the flip side here.
We'll see what happens.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when Isaiah Thomas comes back, though. I don't know.
Yeah, that could change the dynamic for sure. All right, let's flip it a little bit. Let's go with the most surprising team as far as disappointment. Who do you expect to be better than they actually are?
I think this is a pretty easy one, and it's probably the one that you have too, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, what the hell is what the hell is going on there? Well, first off, I love my sports betting, and I've just I put them down here just because I'm frustrated at them, and somebody needs to know about it. I bet $130 to win $40 It wasn't even. It was just a solid. Oh, they're definitely going to win this game. On the Thunder beating the Kings earlier this year, and they lost to the Kings by 9 freaking points. They almost got double-digit loss to the Sacramento Kings, who are as bad as they ever have been, and they're one of the worst franchises in the NBA. So that frustrates me. They are just such a weird dynamic of Westbrook, and I talked about this in my season preview article about how I don't think Paul George and Carmelo, for that matter, are that excited to play with Westbrook. I don't think Westbrook's a lot of fun to play with. I don't think a lot of people like being his teammate just because he's the most ball-hogging point guard in the NBA and just yells at his teammates a lot. He's just a general out there, and I don't think he's that much fun to play with. And right now, the Thunder are the 9th or 10th seed in the West right now. And of course, I'm sure things will turn around when you have talent like that. They'll make the playoffs, but man, I just don't know what to think about them. They lost to the Nets last night. They lost to the Kings earlier in the season, but then they'll go out and beat a team like the Warriors, and then they also beat the Spurs on the road. So I don't know what to think of this team at all. They'll win. They'll beat teams that they're not supposed to beat. They'll lose to teams they're not supposed to lose to. But overall, they have a losing record, so they're a huge disappointment this year. A lot of people thought they'd be the 4th or 5th seed in the West, and I was one of them, to be honest. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's still early. I think it's still turning around, but yeah, I agree. When you got, Carmelo Anthony, Paul George, Russell Westbrook, that looks like really good on paper. And if you're playing fantasy football, you got an awesome team there. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way in the NBA. You got so much talent. Sometimes the talent doesn't mesh well, and maybe they still got time to mesh and still make a run. But yeah, they definitely were my top disappointment. I do have 2 other ones that I have as disappointments. One of them
wait, let me try and guess. Is one of them the Grizzlies?
Actually not. The Grizzlies not on my list, but I mean, they have been disappointing as well. They should make the list, but they weren't one of my 2 teams. The first team I have actually has sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm curious to hear. I thought it would definitely be the Grizzlies. I have no idea who you're going to be talking about.
The first team I have actually is got a winning record. It actually is the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference right now, and that's the Washington Wizards. I actually have picked them, and I'm sticking with it for them to finish 2nd in the East overall. But they have lost to some of the worst teams. They play down to their competition. I really thought that with Celtics and their huge drastic changeover in the Cavs and their drastic changeover in personnel, I thought the Wizards keeping their core intact, already having the chemistry there to be a playoff team. I thought they'd come out of the gate hot. They would, basically own the 1st or 2nd seed, early in the season while the Celtics and the Cavs kind of figured things out. Obviously, the John Wall injury does hurt a little bit, but even when he was playing, I mean, they were playing terrible defense for a while. They couldn't get back on defense. They couldn't stop anybody. They couldn't score. It was just ugly. And then they would go out and beat teams that they shouldn't beat, and they would lose to teams that they should definitely beat. And it's just been a nightmare here. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm not a fan of the Wizards, but I do, get a lot of their media because I live here in D.C. And I just thought they'd be better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing is John Wall's hurt right now, and that really I think John Wall's a top 3 point guard, and I don't know. I think that really took the wind out of their sails. But Bradley Beal has been killing it in his absence, and they've had some nice minutes from Otto Porter and guys like that. But yeah, I agree. I didn't really think of playoff teams as disappointments, but the East is so bad that you're right. They should be like the 3rd or 4th seed in the East. And
then the other one I had there is the Miami Heat. I thought,
yes,
after what they did the second
that.
half of last season, I thought they would, be much better. They're sitting now at the 10th seed, actually looking up at the New York Knicks, which is crazy to me. They've had some injuries too as well. Waiters was out for a while. Hassan Whiteside's out currently. But yeah, I thought they would come out and be a much better team in the beginning of the season. They just haven't shown it yet.
I was going to give an honorable mention, or maybe dishonorable mention, to the Heat for sure for being a disappointment this year, because the second half of last season, going 30-11, that's up near like the Spurs and the Warriors of a 42-game stretch. 30-11, that's incredible. But they have dealt with injuries, and another thing about the Heat is that, man, some of those contracts that they made and that they did this summer and last summer, giving giving Deion Waiters $52 million. Why? Why'd you do that? Why are you giving Deion Waiters $52 million? I know he turned it around and he's a pretty good player for them. And he's been okay this season, I guess, but that's a lot of money. And James Johnson, they paid him a lot of money too. Paid him $60 million. Those James Johnson and Deion Waiters aren't worth over $100 million. They're just not. And so they tried to get Hayward and they missed out on him. So I don't know. Maybe the Heat, that was just a fluke last year. I think Spoelstra is a great coach, but man, they have a lot of money tied up with some guys who aren't really good, and James Johnson is pretty old too, so we'll see what happens. I think they'll sneak into the playoffs still though when Whiteside comes back. Agreed.
I think Spoelstra is a good enough coach to get them into the playoffs for sure. Probably should have made it.
One thing, and I'll give an honorable mention shout out for the surprises this year is the New York freaking Knicks are in the 9th seed in the East and almost the 8th seed. Like that, what the heck? Like I thought they'd be like the second to last seed behind the Bulls. I knew the Bulls were going to be just awful, and the Bulls are terrible. They're 3-20 right now, and destined for that first overall pick this year. So, but the Knicks have really just give the ball to Porzingis, the unicorn, and let him go to work, man. He's an absolute superstar. And being in New York for years to come, they have the free agency destination. People want to play at Madison Square Garden. So it'll be, I don't think they'll make the playoffs this year, but they'll definitely make some noise this summer or next summer. We'll see. Maybe even some LeBron James conspiracy theories. Who knows?
Definitely. All right, let's move on to individual players here. Let's talk about your most surprising player in a positive way. Like who kind of took the reins and kind of jumped off the page for you this season so far?
Well, I'll give it in tiers, like a superstar tier who sort of jumped to superstardom, then like sort of mid-range, or then like talk about some rookies too. But here, this would be my Eastern Conference All-Star ballot right now. It'd be Kyrie, Giannis, LeBron, Porzingis at center. And can you guess who my other guard spot would be? Who I'm voting for to start the All-Star game this year?
I'm gonna guess Ben Simmons.
Oh, that's a good guess. He'll definitely be an All-Star, but I think they'd have him play a forward position on the ballot. The answer is Victor Oladipo of the Indiana Pacers.
Nice.
Victor Oladipo is playing out of his mind right now, and he just hit a game winner against the Cavs tonight. And so he's averaging almost 24 a game, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. He's been excellent for the Pacers. And I think it's cool that the Pacers reached out to him since he played his college ball in Indiana. So he's been my biggest surprise as sort of a jump to superstardom, because I always believed in him and I thought he was a really good player, but he was just stuck on some terrible situations in Orlando and then playing with ball hog Westbrook last year. So he's found his home in Indiana for sure.
Definitely. I agree with you on that one 100%.
Yes, absolutely. And then mid-tier, he's like the Alvin Kamara of the NBA. He killed it in the preseason, but it's actually translating to playing well in the regular season, and that's Kyle Kuzma of the Los Angeles Lakers. Won Western Conference Rookie of the Month, played excellent, and is averaging 18 points a game, and he is the best rookie on the Lakers right now, and it's not even close. So I did not expect. I thought, it's preseason, anything can happen. Anybody can be a star in preseason, but he's legit, and he's played excellent so far, and it's excellent that they got him late in the first round.
Definitely. I got a couple guys here that I wanted to talk about. Unless you got any more you wanted to mention first?
Just a couple more, I guess. Lauri Markkanen of the Chicago Bulls, 7th overall pick this last year. He was in the Jimmy Butler trade. He's been putting up some ridiculous numbers, especially early on in the season. He was having games of like 20, 22, and 10. And a lot of people had him as a bust because, he's just a Finnish guy that nobody really knows about. But Lauri Markkanen has been excellent this year. But there might be just like we say it in fantasy all the time, someone's got to put up 90 points for your team. So it might just be a good stats, bad team guy, because the Bulls are just awful. And they've had a bunch of interesting fantasy outputs because there are no stars who play in Chicago now. It's just whoever really has the ball, So Lauri Markkanen has played it surprisingly well. I did not think he was going to be very good, and he's averaging about 15-9 on the season. So Lauri Markkanen. And another one, Donovan Mitchell of the Utah Jazz.
Ah, you stole my thunder.
Yeah, sorry about that. But I mean, Donovan Mitchell, I talked about I wrote an article for Going for Two, top 5 player stocks to invest in, some quote unquote penny stocks if the NBA was a stock market and you had to invest in players, which is kind of how daily fantasy works. And Donovan Mitchell was one of those players on that list, but I didn't think he was going to be this good. So he even surprised me, who had him in that article about how he was going to be the steal of this draft. He put up 41 points the other night. That's pretty impressive considering he was barely a lottery pick. So, I mean, Donovan Mitchell has been going off, and especially with the loss of Gordon Hayward, excellent GM in Utah who found that diamond in the rough.
Definitely. I think Mitchell's got them saying Gordon Hayward who? Because I mean the way he's playing, exactly. It's amazing how good he's playing as a rookie right now. He doesn't look a rookie at all. It looks like he's a veteran. I had one other guy.
And
go ahead.
Well, and the fact that he's extremely fun to watch. The dunks that he does are just ridiculous, and I love watching him play, and he's putting up good numbers. Who is the other one on your list?
The other one I had on my list is a career 6-man, and I just didn't know how good he was. And now that Blake Griffin is no longer in the lineup, Lou Williams has been ridiculous. I know he's always been 6-man of the year. He's come off the bench. He's instant offense, but I've watched a couple of his games just recently, and this guy really is instant offense. I don't know why he doesn't start. Maybe he prefers to come off the bench. He still puts in 30 minutes a game. But I mean, for the Clippers to get basically have Jamal Crawford, as a 6-man for however long he was, and then to get rid of him and pick up Lou Williams. I mean, it's kind of like they like that 6-man role, and Lou Williams has just been ridiculous so far this year.
Absolutely, he did really well with the Lakers last year too. Before he got traded in that role, people just don't give Lou Williams any respect for some reason. I don't know why. It's just because he's a quote unquote bench player, but Lou Williams can light it up and is an excellent offensive weapon.
I mean, just looking right now, he's a 6-man. Think of that. He's still coming off the bench. He's averaging more points than Jimmy Butler, more points than Marc Gasol. You know what I mean? He's got more points than Aaron Gordon, and he's coming off the bench. It's just a bench player scoring this many points. I mean, he's fun to watch too. I mean, he just shoots threes like they're nothing.
Absolutely. I'm a big Lou Williams fan for sure.
All right, let's flip it on the other side now. Who's your biggest disappointment so far this year?
Biggest disappointment. Looking at the numbers, there haven't been that many disappointments necessarily. I'm curious to see who you have. I had a lot of trouble finding someone who I was just like, oh, what the hell was up with him? One disappointment, and it's not really his fault, but I mean, I'm sure you've seen the vines of the free throw stuff, but Markelle Fultz might be one of the biggest busts in NBA history. That might, who knows? I mean, he's not playing right now. He was terrible when he played. And the Sixers to have that first overall pick just be a bust right now, man, that's a huge disappointment for them. And I mean, Fultz, I want to see good basketball. I want to see excellent teams like that. And it sucks that he got hurt, but I'm sure you saw those vines of that free throw that he had where it didn't even hit the rim. It just hit straight the left side of the backboard. It was like, oh my God. What on earth is going on? So he did not play well in the time that he was given, and now he's injured. So he's been a pretty big disappointment this year. I guess I can't really figure out too many others. I guess
there's been a couple for me. I'm actually drawing a blank on one of the names. I'm actually trying to Google it right now as you speak. This guy, I guess. Disappointment, I guess, because I predicted him to be one of the most improved players this year. He wasn't really much to speak of last year either, but I thought he'd get his chance this year to shine, and some of it's probably because of Jason's kids' rotations. But Thon Maker, I really thought he would take that next step and be that sort of dominant, super athletic, guy in the middle there for the Bucks, and he just hasn't taken that role. I think John Henson's still starting over him. They even, got rid of Monroe. I thought that would open up more minutes for him. He's still playing about 20 minutes a game. He's pretty much middle of the road in every category. I thought he'd be more of an athletic freak and sort of take that role over, and he just hasn't done it yet.
Definitely. Thon Maker is one of the most intriguing young players in the NBA right now, just because I don't know if you, but back in high school, I would always look up like who the next guys were and stuff like that on YouTube. And so Thon Maker, he's close to my heart because Thon Maker was one of the first clickbait YouTube videos of a basketball player I ever saw. And it was like 7 to 8th grader Thon Maker destroys other 13-year-olds. And I was like, oh man, I got to click on this. And it's exactly, Thon Maker hasn't grown since 8th grade. He's still like an NBA player. And he was just, it's like this dude who's 7'2", extremely skinny, who just, someone was like, yeah, you got to play basketball. And that's what he did. And it's crazy that he's in the NBA right now. And he started those playoff games for the Bucks last year, but I agree. He has been, I didn't think he was going to be that big of a fantasy sleeper or anything like that. He just doesn't get the ball that much, but right. Yeah, I've been kind of disappointed by him. I'd like to see him develop a little more, but I don't think Jason Kidd's that good of a coach.
And then there's one more guy I had on my list, and I know he's kind of near and dear to your heart because he used to play there in Minnesota. That's Ricky Rubio. He started off playing really well, and he's averaging 4.8 assists a game. This is a guy who has like a 9, career assist mark. He's only averaging just under 5 assists per game. I just don't know what happened to him when he went to Utah.
Yeah, interesting. That's Ricky Rubio. That's a good one. I didn't even think of him. I guess the fact that I haven't played him on DraftKings or FanDuel yet this year is probably a reason for that. But yeah, I think he really wanted to be a part of the Timberwolves this year, just with Jimmy Butler, and the team's finally looking up and things are finally going well. And he had always been on those terrible Timberwolves teams for years. And so then finally, when the team's good, they ship him off to Utah. I think he was kind of hurt by that. And I completely get why. But yeah, he hasn't been what we thought he was in Utah. And he's getting a lot of minutes there too. Like, there's no problem with his minutes. They don't have any backup point guard play whatsoever.
Exactly. Now, it'd be one thing if he wasn't scoring, but to drop, he's literally averaging 4.8 assists per game as the main point guard in Utah, with guys like we just mentioned, with Donovan Mitchell there. They got, Rudy Gobert. He was out for a while, but he's got offensive weapons there that he can use, and he's only averaging less than 5 assists per game. James Harden averages more assists per game, and he's a 2 guard. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Exactly. It's, you never really know, but yeah, Rubio has been a pretty big disappointment for the Jazz, and they gave up a first round pick for him. So yeah, but they're still a playoff team, and I think they're an underdog candidate to make some noise this next year. But yeah, that's a good one for sure. Ricky Rubio and Thon Maker have definitely. You'd like to see more from them this year.
Definitely. All right, let's go on to some early season awards here. If the season was to end today, who is your most improved player from last season?
It's actually not one of the guys that I mentioned really, but I think I just didn't really expect this from him, and he's at a 7. And I think he actually, if he continues on this pace, I think he'll win it for sure. And that's Aaron Gordon of the Orlando Magic. Aaron Gordon is just sort of viewed as sort of like just a dunker, basically. Everybody knew him from the dunk contest, and he's on a terrible Magic team, and he just doesn't. He's one of the few assets that the Magic have. But he had a 40-15 game the other night, and he's just been filling the stat sheet and super fun to watch. And he's actually hitting 3-pointers at the power forward spot. So Aaron Gordon for sure is my most improved player. I didn't expect that from him this year. He's been excellent. Another name, honorable mention, whose improvement isn't as drastic as Gordon's is this year, but Tobias Harris has played out of his mind too, kind of like that Lou Williams comment you made. Tobias Harris was always just he was on the Magic as well. He always be like 15, 16 points a game. He's averaging almost 20 points a game for the Pistons this year, and he's definitely a reason that they were one of my surprise teams this year. He's been excellent this year, but I think Gordon will probably win that award.
Yeah, I think the one guy I had on my list is one guy you already mentioned earlier. That's Oladipo. I think he was sort of not in his natural position, where he was in Oklahoma City playing second fiddle to Russell Westbrook. I think we saw what he could be when he was in Orlando, when he was actually given the reign of the team, when they finally got him off the bench and they said, okay, it's your team for a little bit. And he kind of took over there. Then he went to OKC and he was playing second fiddle to Russell Westbrook. Everyone thought he was sort of washed up. And as you said, he goes to Indiana, and now he's one of the top tier players right now in the NBA, which is kind of crazy to think that, everyone kind of writ him off last year. And now he's to put it in DFS terms, I mean, this guy's over $9,000 now on FanDuel. He's in elite category now.
Exactly. I just could not, like when Nikola Jokic of the Nuggets, I just can't, like $9,000 and Oladipo's now $9,000. That's a good barometer of how impressive and how much he's improved, is that Oladipo's freaking $9,000 now on DK. But yeah, again, I think he's going to start the All-Star game. I think he is. He's excellent. He's always in the highlights, making big time clutch shots against the Spurs. Tonight he did it against the Cavs, and he's playing in Indiana where he played his college ball. It's awesome. I'm rooting for Oladipo for sure.
Definitely.
And he might be up there with Aaron Gordon. I just think Oladipo was pretty good on the Magic, and like he's taken a pretty big leap, but he was already pretty good. Aaron Gordon, I didn't think was that good of a player, and now he's taken a huge leap. I just think the most improved player, I mean, by definition, I think Gordon will win it, but Oladipo for sure is up there.
Definitely. All right, I think we may have already talked about this award already, but just in case you have somebody different on your list, the sixth man of the year.
Yeah, I think you and I agree. It's Lou Williams for sure. Again,
definitely, I agree. I
think he has.
Go ahead.
I think he has 2. He might have 3 already. He definitely has 2. I'm not sure if he has 3.
Yeah, I think he has 2. I think the only one that has 3 right now, I believe, is Crawford. But I think he'll definitely get this third one this year if he keeps his pace up. All right, this one's gonna be a little bit tougher because one of the guys that might end up on this list hasn't played yet this season, but Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, this one I struggled with. I mean, Gobert's been hurt. Kawhi probably doesn't have enough games now. He's already missed 25, so he probably will not be eligible for the award. I guess you just give it to Draymond Green again. I don't know. I mean, who did you have on your list? I'd guess it would be Green right now. I mean, he's just the best defender in the league, and Kawhi and Gobert aren't playing right now, so I guess they'd just give it to Draymond again.
Yep, that's pretty much where I'm at. I mean, I think Draymond by default, unless, Gobert has a crazy, second half or 2/3 of a season, after getting injured and just has, a ridiculous season that he can probably take over. I don't think Kawhi is going to be back in time to log enough games in order to hit that. And then really after that, I can't think of any other, true sort of lockdown defender. I think Giannis Antetokounmpo, has the skills to eventually be that guy. I don't think he's quite there just yet, though, but I think he's also a very good defender, so he could potentially be there in years to come.
Definitely. I completely agree. One thing that I want to mention before we go to this next award is someone needs to put me in one of these GM spots for real. If I'm the GM of your Pelicans, Alvin Gentry's gone. He's gone right now. I know they've been okay this year. That probably will be like the 8th seed, probably lose to Golden State in the first round. But David Fizdale is on the coaching market right now. Nobody's talking about that. David Fizdale is a good coach. He's an excellent coach.
Definitely.
And I just don't know why, if you're a team like the Pelicans or the Suns, why David Fizdale isn't coaching your team right now. Why is the Suns interim coach coaching right now? I mean, Earl Watson was terrible, and Alvin Gentry is really bad. I just think David Fizdale I would love to see him coach Davis and Cousins there in New Orleans. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not a big fan of Gentry, and I haven't been since they first hired him. I can never figure his rotations out. I don't know what he's doing half the time. I think last year we spoke about this, where they had all these analytics that said that this was the Pelicans' best team, on the floor, and he never played that particular lineup. I forget who was talking. I think it was Terrence Jones, I believe, was the power forward at the time. And, with him on the floor with Anthony Davis was their best statistically, lineup in the for the season, and they weren't playing him, and then they traded him. I don't know. It's just, I don't understand what he does half the time.
I completely agree. I was just going to mention Terrence Jones because they got Davis or they got Cousins and Davis is there, and Jones was playing the starting minutes. It doesn't mean they didn't even trade him. They released him. They
That's
just
right.
said, you're the fall guy. Why not have him come off the bench? Terrence Jones is good.
Exactly.
Terrence Jones is really good. And I don't know why they didn't. And so I don't know if that was Gentry's decision or not, but I don't know how Gentry has a job still. I really don't. I'm 100% in agreement with you. When analytics and just taking 3-point shots is all the NBA is nowadays. And you see that your best lineups, I mean, you got to play your best lineups. And Jones and Davis was that lineup, and he just did not play him that much. I just don't. He just does. I don't get it. I really don't. And so I think Fizdale should be the coach of the Pelicans or the Suns right now. I don't know why he's still out of a job even for this long.
Agreed. All right, so now let's do the big one here. MVP. Who do you got?
This is tough. This is tough for sure. And it's going to be another. Last year was one of the best MVP races we've ever had in the NBA, and I still think the wrong person won it. But
I'm with you on that as well.
Yeah, that's an issue for a different day. But right now, I don't think there's any. I think LeBron is going to win it this year. I don't think there's any. The Cavs are so bad, just so bad, that I think that they would not make the playoffs if LeBron was there right now. Even if Isaiah Thomas comes back in January, Kevin Love's there. They've got like Dwayne Wade, Tristan Thompson. If LeBron James was not there, they would be like the 12th seed in the East right now. And now they're the 2nd seed. And the numbers are there. The assists, the rebounds, everything is there. I think he'll get his fifth MVP trophy. But it's going to be tough because he's got some excellent competitors like James Harden again, and the Rockets are the 1st seed in the East or in the West right now. So, I mean, James Harden, number 1 team, best player, excellent numbers, leading the league in scoring. I mean, is that enough? But I just think they have Chris Paul, and they have some other good solid role players. But just LeBron, the Cavs are so bad when LeBron is off the floor. And so I think LeBron will probably, if he plays the way he's playing right now, he'll probably win it. But if Thomas comes back and takes some of the numbers and some of the credit away from LeBron, I think it's Harden's award to lose, I think. But another couple of sleepers, I mean, Giannis has been playing really well and is averaging 30 a game, but the Bucks are like the 6th seed right now. Unless they get like the 2 or 3 seed, he doesn't really have a shot.
Yeah, I'm with you on LeBron as well. I think if we were to end the season right now, I think LeBron gets the MVP. The only thing I'm worried about is, if we're predicting it for the end of the season, LeBron, I think, leads the league right now in minutes played. And I just don't think that he's going to be able to maintain that pace. I think at some point he's going to either slow down just from the physical fatigue of it, or the Cavs are going to kind of reel him back a little bit to save him for the playoffs, which may lower his numbers. Because he is getting up there in age. He's been in the league for quite a while. And if he continues at that pace, I think he's going to slow down a little bit. So he won't win the award by the end of the season, I don't believe. But as of right now, he is the MVP. I do think James Harden will finally get his MVP. I think he's been basically runner-up twice to 2 of the most historic seasons ever.
Exactly.
I mean, you had Steph Curry the year he won it was a historic year. He had Westbrook last year, historic year. He was runner-up in both those years. I think James Harden finally breaks through, gets his MVP trophy that I think he should have deserved last year. But again, that's for a different day. I'd love to see Giannis get it, but you're right. The Bucks just aren't good enough to put him in that category just yet, unless they get really hot. I don't think he'll have enough wins under his belt to get that MVP trophy. But I think right now it's LeBron James. I think by season's end it's going to be James Harden.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. I completely agree. Unless one of them gets hurt, of course, knock on wood. But I mean, last year, if Russell Westbrook gets 9.9 assists last year, Harden's the MVP. That's plain and simple. But he did average a triple-double, and I never thought I'd see the day. So he was the MVP by a mile. But I think if you really look, and I mean, Bill Simmons said the same thing. If you look at all the offensive points per possession for all the offensive efficiency numbers, Harden blew Westbrook out of the water in all those categories last year. And that's all that matters, is putting up the most points for your team and getting the opposing team to not score a lot of points. And Harden was better in every single category, but Westbrook had 10 assists or 10 rebounds a game or whatever. And
right.
So he got it. But I think Harden, you're right. He definitely deserves it. If history was a little different, he could have 2 MVP trophies on his mantle after winning 6th Man of the Year. But I think Harden should get it. But right now the MVP is LeBron.
Definitely. All right, that wraps up the show for today, Matt. I want to thank you again for coming on as usual. Always good to talk some NFL, some NBA. I love talking sports. Appreciate you coming on. Tell my listeners where they can follow you on Twitter.
Let's see. You can follow me at Return of the Matt. Little Mac Morrison homage to Mac Morrison. Also, one thing I wanted to say, and this is kind of just like a little thing to close out with, is so I think when the Warriors signed Nick Young this season in the offseason, I believe that this is their goal. Like, the Warriors are so dominant and so just they're going to win the championship this year. I think the NBA offseason this season is going to be a lot more interesting than the actual season. But I think the Warriors, like, little inside joke for the GMs of this league is that their goal, the Warriors' goal, is to get as many like goofball ass clowns in the NBA a championship ring. They got Zaza and JaVale one last year, and now they got Nick Young, and so they're just trying to get as many of just like the goofball crazy like Twitter guys on NBA. They're just trying to get them just the worst guys NBA championship rings. So like when Westbrook and Harden hang them up, they don't have any rings, but like Nick Young and JaVale McGee have like NBA Finals rings.
Right, it's crazy. That's a good theory.
That's
there.
Exactly what they're doing.
That's funny.
All right, well, good talking to you, man. Always a pleasure.
That'll be a topic for our next podcast. Who are the Warriors going to give a ring to next?
Exactly.
All right, man. You have a good night.